inspiration than T.S. Eliot, so I'll take it. So yes, occasionally I would quote T.S. Eliot on the set, but I quoted lots of other things too.
You know, you're such an accomplished stage actor as well. You know, you've done Othello and Hamlet, and as I was telling you earlier, my favorite, a revival of Pinter's Betrayal on Broadway. And you know, I wonder, with the isolation and the lack of connection that Loki initially feels, like how much of an emotional thread do you feel between Loki and some of the other characters you've played?
That's such an interesting question. One of the things I found most fascinating, endlessly fascinating, every time I've played Loki, is the tension between his exterior and his interior life. That there is a presentation often of a very playful, very charming, very controlled, collected, witty, strategic, mischievous character. But behind the mask of the playfulness and the mischief is something much more turbulent, much more chaotic, and much more uncertain. That there is a vulnerability and a emotional fragmentation and a desire for connection that gets distorted on the way. It's in his heart, that's where he lives, but somehow it never finds its way out, except in certain moments when a dramatic event breaks the mask and you see his truth. And I've always found that tension fascinating between what is presented on the outside and what's going on the inside. And I suppose there are some other characters I've played who have that tension. Well, actually, Robert in Betrayal is someone who suppresses his pain, and then because the pain isn't being expressed in an open way, it gets misshapen on the way out. I loved performing that. But I also believe that all human beings are incredibly complex. We're all really complex, and we contain multitudes. And we have many selves inside us, and we don't present all those selves all the time. You're a different person at work to who you are when you're ordering a cup of coffee, or who you are with your family or at home. So I'm trying to think of another character that's like that. But Jonathan Pine is quite like that in a way. The Night Manager. He as a John le Carre called him the close observer, and as a field agent who is taking on different identities to collect information to pass on to the intelligence services, he has to dissemble and pretend and present and dissimulate, and so he's got this chameleonic quality, and you wonder if there's a center to that human being. I think there is, but I think he moves the center for himself, for his as part of his mission.
And The Night Manager is coming back for season 2. So.
It is.
So, all this dark and twisty stuff aside, like, Loki is also just very funny. And, it's this sort of like funny detective thriller with Owen Wilson, and it's almost like sort of like a buddy cop comedy too. So tell me a little bit about that part of it and working with Owen Wilson.
Owen Wilson is the absolute best. And he gave so much to this. He committed himself so totally to it. I remember when we started the first season, we sat down for an afternoon because Mobius, of course, is almost a scholar of Loki. He knows Loki better than Loki does. And he wanted me to take him through my journey up to that point of playing Loki. So we watched some clips and we talked a bit. And he asked me, Tom, what do you love about playing Loki? And I think I said something like, I just love that he's got such range, and I get to play, like if Loki's a keyboard of a piano, I get to play the light twinkly keys up top of wit and charm and playfulness, but I also get to play the heavy keys down in the left hand about grief and pain and loneliness and loss. And in this first scene of the first episode of the first season, he quoted that back to me as Mobius. Sort of as part of the interrogation, he said, "See, I can play the heavy keys too." His capacity for invention is just, he's so spontaneous, he's so live on set. There are so many examples of that in the first episode of this season, when Mobius and Loki meet Ouroboros, played by the radiantly joyful Ke Huy Quan. Just fantastic. And there's a scene where they both have this enormous challenge, but there are great risks. Loki may be disassembled at a molecular level and never reassembled again, and Mobius may have his skin peeled off by radiation. And Key, as OB said, "Are you both ready?" And I think the scene ended there, and Owen improvised as Mobius. He said, "Well, hang on, I'm not sure I already haven't had my skin peeled off." And then so I had to say, "Well, am I ready to be molecularly disassembled and never reassembled again?" And Owen said, "Well, actually, I'd rather have that." What are you talking about? You get deleted from all of time forever. And he goes, "Yeah, but at least you don't get your skin peeled off." And I said, "But at least you get to live." And he said, "What's the quality of life with no skin?" It's just perfect Owen Wilson genius. But it wasn't just his capacity for invention. I think he really loved the philosophical nature of the relationship. Loki and Mobius talk about big ideas, and I hope the audience have found those scenes interesting. We've loved playing them. And we used to talk as well about, because you're right, it is these two detectives following trails of breadcrumbs across the timeline, and this unlikely pairing. And perhaps even Owen and I are kind of an unlikely pairing, but we get on so well. We have similar taste in things. And in working on the scenes, we would agree that they always work best when Mobius and Loki were passionately disagreeing with each other. That they had a different point of view about what the next step should be, and that we should we used to talk about keeping the teeth in the scene, and not sort of keeping it sharp, but actually it would be fun because we were in such passionate conflict, if that makes sense. I can't speak more highly of Owen. I loved working with him, and it's been a long journey. It's been 4 to 5 years of our lives, so yeah, it's been great.
It's so interesting too, seeing some of the scenes like in the Automat, which is again one of these like really fun retro futuristic elements, and sort of a callback to the original Loki that we all met. When you've one scene with Mobius where you're saying, "Well, yeah, I know your emotions were a little out of control just now, but remember when I was ticked off at my father and brother, and then tried to invade New York with an alien army?" And it's just such a contrast from who he was and who we know him to be now in Loki at the end of season 2.
It's actually almost as if Mobius has been a kind of patient analyst for Loki, and he's done some growth, and he's done some personal growth, and now Loki can return the favor and say, it's okay, sometimes our emotions get the better of us, we all make mistakes. I once tried to, take over this New York City with an alien army. It's a bad day at the office. Yeah, it is fun, and it's important to remember, and we always try to remember that the show's called Loki, and therefore the whole world that we created, we wanted to infuse with that playfulness and whimsy. I feel like that's who the character has always been in our human consciousness. He's represented playfulness. He's the trickster. He's the boundary crosser. He's disruptive. He's spontaneous. He's mercurial. He's unexpected. He's unconventional. And we wanted every character in the show to have those qualities. That they were all a little bit good and a little bit bad. The TVA was uncertain and full of doubt. A little bit good, a little bit bad. It's been the most fulfilling sandbox to play in for so long.
On that note, it's been wonderful watching you in this role for the last 15 years. And thank you so much for sharing all of these insights with us. Everyone give it up for Tim.